Good evening, I'm Joel Flynn in Hong Kong. Welcome to View TV News. Coming up on tonight's show. More than a case of back-to-school blues, a teachers' union in Hong Kong says stress levels are running high among the city's educators. Hong Kong athletes bring home a record haul of medals from the Asian Games, earning praise from the Chief Secretary. Plus, the railways lawmaker says MTR, not LegCo, should figure out how to pay for the Sha Tin Central Railway budget overrun. Good evening. Tomorrow is the first day of the new academic year in Hong Kong, and as is to be expected, not everyone is excited about it. But the reasons are more serious than early alarm bells and homework. The Professional Teachers Union has found that the city's teachers are feeling the strain, and that's taking a toll on their mental health. Ahmed Lee reports.
The Professional Teachers Union, together with the Hong Kong Psychological Society, conducted online surveys with more than 1,800 kindergarten, primary and secondary school teachers from April to May. The results reveal that the majority feel very stressed in their jobs. 30% show signs of moderate to severe depression, and some said they even considered self-harm.
We heard from teachers over the past 10 years that they're competing to leave work later. You can't leave when your fellow colleagues haven't left. Everyone's so busy. Nowadays, teachers don't get off work until the lights go off. With the rise of social media, there are endless work orders for teachers. They're on call 24/7. They can't even stop when they go home, and that's stressful.
But teaching is far from the only burden. Educators often have administrative responsibilities to shoulder. That's in addition to staff appraisals and inspections, as well as caring for school children with special educational needs, known as SEN. The PTU wants to see better teacher-class ratios, the hiring of more staff to attend to SEN students, and assistants to deal with non-teaching work.
Well, it's not just the teachers. The mental health of students is equally worrying. The Baptist Oi Kwan Social Service surveyed 7,500 students from 21 secondary schools. Among them, half showed signs of depression, and more than 1/5 of them said their lives were meaningless. 5% said they felt suicidal, the highest level since 2012. The survey also suggests the more time students spend on social media and computer games, the more depressed they are. Well, the Asian Games in Jakarta are wrapping up tonight, and Hong Kong's athletes are feeling especially victorious, booking the best results ever. The triathlon team today scored a bronze in the mixed event, with Bailey Brown, Law Leong Tim, Choi Yan Yin and Wang Tze Tu finishing the race in just over an hour and 33 minutes and 4 seconds. That brought Hong Kong's total medal tally to 46. Chief Secretary for Administration Matthew Cheung had nothing but praise for Team Hong Kong today, calling them role models. In his blog, Cheung quoted Olympic gold medalist Li Laishan, saying Hong Kong athletes are not trash and that he was impressed by their spirit. He described the athletes as role models for young people to learn from. Cheung also stressed that the government supports sports development and will invest nearly $32 billion on building a Kai Tak stadium to host more sports for Hong Kongers. Well, as the public consultation on land supply nears its end date, public opinion appears to favour developing brownfield sites and land reclamation to solve shortages. That's according to Land Supply Task Force Chairman Stanley Wong, who says he will soon be presenting his initial findings to the Chief Executive ahead of her policy address. Meanwhile, on a radio show, Executive Council convener Bernard Chan voiced his support for land reclamation, referring to Our Hong Kong Foundation's 2,200-hectare East Lantau Metropolis plan. Chan also said reclamation could prevent further fallout over land development.
There will be no villagers or property developers to deal with, no debates of a resumption, no need to worry about complicated zoning and planning regulation. There will be no need to fuss about land premiums. The government will have full control of things like apartment size and pricing. We could use this new space to deliver plentiful, decent-sized, affordable homes.
LegCo Railways Subcommittee Chairman Michael Tien has warned that the cost of the scandal-ridden Sha Tin Central Link could be even more than expected. Late last year, the government estimated a $16.5 billion budget overrun for the $71 billion project. But if the latest subsidence issues result in further delays, Tien says the final cost could be 20% more. He also says it should be up to MTR and its contractors, not the Legislative Council, to figure out how to foot the bill. Given the government's annual surplus, he believes Hong Kong can afford to spend extra time on the project to ensure its quality and safety.
Right now, financially, we can definitely afford to pay a high amount for a rail in exchange for not rushing it, doing a quality job, and having accurate reporting on all subsidence issues.
All right, coming up next, the latest in business news. Well, we start with the latest in global trade. Negotiations between the US, Mexico and Canada over changes to the North American Free Trade Agreement have been in focus this week, with Washington demanding the deal be updated. On Friday, US President Donald Trump told Congress he planned to sign a bilateral deal with Mexico, although lawmakers there warned that could struggle to win approval unless Canada was included. A meeting on the same day between Canadian and US officials, though, didn't lead to a resolution. Donald Trump tweeted overnight, "There is no political necessity to keep Canada in the new NAFTA deal. If we don't make a fair deal for the US after decades of abuse, Canada will be out." For months, Venezuelan President Nicolas Maduro has been talking up a new cryptocurrency dubbed the Petro. Backed by oil reserves in an isolated town, he says it will be the cornerstone of a recovery plan to revive the country's battered economy. But, as Hivovi Cooper reports, the reality appears to be a very different story.
In the isolated town of Ataperire in northeastern Venezuela, the 1,300 residents barely have cell phone reception and are only connected to the outside world by a two-lane road riddled with potholes. But President Nicolas Maduro says the area in and around Ataperire sits atop 5 billion barrels of oil. And that oil has been pledged as backing for a new cryptocurrency called the Petro. Reuters correspondent Brian Ellsworth visited the region.
People here really have no idea what it is. They've heard people talk a lot about it. They've heard presidential announcements about it, but no one's seen or bought a Petro. I spoke with a teacher who said she had gotten instructions from the education ministry to teach her first grade class about the importance of the Petro. But she says she doesn't have any information. She doesn't understand it herself.
Since its launch in February, the Petro has been the subject of intense debate, with Maduro's government recently linking it to a new currency, the sovereign bolivar. So far, Venezuela has offered nothing other than Maduro's word to substantiate any investments in the cryptocurrency. And there is another looming problem. The Petro is not backed by a commodity that is already being bought and sold, but rather by oil still buried underground.
We can see in different areas some oil wells, small operations. Many of them appear to be 20 or 30 years old. Many of them are abandoned. Most of what this area looks like is what you're seeing behind me, scrub grass and trees.
Experts say the energy infrastructure could take years to develop, making the Petro a promise for the future than a reality of the present. Yet another indicator of the breakdown of Venezuela's financial systems as the country deals with a massive economic crisis.
Britain has enjoyed one of its hottest summers on record, and the warm climate has meant good news for one growing industry that's heavily reliant on the weather. Winemaking, of course. As Sean Hassett reports, English vineyards are set to reap their biggest harvest ever.
When the sun shines in Britain, people head outdoors, and they'll often soak up the sun with a drink, whether that's beer, cider, spirits or wine. Retailer Waitrose says its sparkling wine sales have risen by more than 50% this summer. But people aren't just drinking more wine this year, the country is producing more wine too.
We're about 2.5 tonnes a hectare up on a normal year, I would say, in this vineyard.
He says it's been consistently over 30 degrees at the vineyard this summer. The dry start to the summer, following a wet spring, has been ideal.
So what we've got is quite big bunches, loads of berries on them. So what we're looking at with these is it's absolute dream scenario in terms of grape growing.
Vineyards in the region are on track for an earlier harvest. Some are looking at dates in mid-September, rather than the usual time of early October. And it's got people in the industry predicting 2018 could be a record year.
The best year on record for English wine was 2014, when we produced about 6.4 million bottles. Hopefully this year we're on track for even more.
The average for the past 5 years has been around 5 million.
Overall, what we're looking at is getting to more like 10 million by shortly after 2020, so that's what we're aiming for.
Much of that growth is being driven by the big estates, Chapel Down, Nyetimber and Rathfinny, which are all producing close to 1 million bottles a year each. But with all this growth in supply, will the demand for English wine be able to keep up?
The response has been great. I think like the UK market in general has been more welcoming when it comes to English sparkling wine. People ask by name for it, so some people actually ask for the sparkling English wine, which is something that has only been happening for like probably the last 2 years, I'll say.
And with hotter summers becoming the norm in Britain, that's giving wine lovers something to cheer about.
Not too bad, is it? All right, time for a short break now, but do stay with us. Up next, find out how China is aiming to turn remote rural regions like this into hotspots for thrill-seeking sports fans. Don't go away.
We enrage. We envy. We resent. We dislike.
We breathe. We laugh. We cry. We live. We disappoint. We frustrate. We bore. We suffer.
We fear. We doubt. We defeat. We empower.
We communicate.
We talk.
We listen.
We learn.
We care. Jazzing up.
Touching hearts.
Paying attention.
Seemingly distant.
Deeply connected.
Take a trip to the land down under. Behind every native animal surviving in the wild.
Can we talk about this?
Or the furry babies living in different households.
This is a massive open gash. I don't think at positioning it's too bad.
There's a dedicated veterinary team.
That's just such a good result.
Because animal lives matter.
Look after my girl.
Thank you so much.
Bondi Vet. Tonight at 8 on View TV 6.
Broken relationship.
I should have done more to try and find her.
Long lost loved ones.
Breaks my heart, a brother, and we've never met him.
When hopes of reunion with the missing person almost exhausted.
I don't even have a picture of him.
He is the go-to guy.
I would love to take you to your brother. You weren't the dark secret. You were the missing family member.
Last Hope with Troy Dunn. Monday night at 9 on View TV 6. Finding the unfindable. No food.
Need some food.
No shelter.
I have to build up my shelter.
No fresh water.
There we go. I need this.
No tools.
This I can make use of.
No camera crew.
There's just not enough to gather here. There's not enough to hunt.
Just one man alone in the wilderness, surviving. Survivor Man. Wednesday night at 8:30 on View TV 6. Veteran coach.
很多学生可能会冲着我而去。
New coach on the block.
我将会用音乐和你们认真玩。
Sing China. Friday night at 9. Live on Channel 96 View TV 6. From raw materials to finished products.
The world's a better place because of caramel.
Or inspiring details.
There's 700 different condiments here at Beauty Foods.
Wonderful processes.
All natural ingredients that was made with hand.
Get ready to witness the birth of your favorite nibbles. Food Factory. Tonight at 7:30 on View TV 6.
Welcome back. It's a sign of souring relations between Washington and Islamabad. The US military has now slashed hundreds of millions of dollars worth of aid to Pakistan. That's driven by allegations that Pakistan isn't cracking down hard enough on militant groups. Ryan Brooks has the details.
The U.S. military is canceling $300 million in aid to Pakistan over what it calls a failure to tackle militant groups. A Pentagon spokesman revealed the move exclusively to Reuters and said the funds will be driven elsewhere if Congress approves. It adds to a broader cut to security aid earlier this year when President Donald Trump accused Pakistan of paying back past aid with, quote, nothing but lies and deceit. However, news of the move comes just days before a visit by U.S. Secretary of State Mike Pompeo to meet the new Pakistani Prime Minister Imran Khan. Defense Chief Jim Mattis said last week that militants will be a primary part of Pompeo and Khan's discussion. Experts on the conflict next door in Afghanistan, America's longest war, argue that safe havens in Pakistan have helped insurgents. They say it gives Taliban-linked militants a place to plot deadly strikes and regroup after ground offensives in Afghanistan. Pakistan denies those charges. This isn't the first time the Pentagon has canceled these kinds of funds, but this year, as Pakistan's economy struggles, the move may get more attention from Imran Khan, the new leader. One analyst told Reuters the Pentagon may be aiming to squeeze the country when it's vulnerable. As for Khan, he's opposed America's open-ended presence in Afghanistan and once suggested he might order U.S. drones to be shot down if they enter Pakistan's airspace. In a victory speech, he said he wants to see mutually beneficial ties with Washington. Khan is set to meet Pompeo in the capital, Islamabad, on Wednesday.
Ties between China and Japan are getting back on a normal track, and talks between the countries have been extremely good. That's according to a newspaper interview with Japanese Prime Minister Shinzo Abe, published today. The Japanese leader is expected to visit the mainland at the end of October and has said he hopes to invite President Xi Jinping to Japan in the future. Legendary US Senator John McCain is set to be laid to rest later today, a day after a memorial service in which former President Barack Obama appeared to take a dig at Donald Trump. Former President George W. Bush also attended the service, which was littered with national leaders, but notable for the absence of Trump, who had been asked to stay away by the McCain family. Trump and McCain had feuded for years in public over differences in both policy and attitude. McCain's daughter, Meghan, condemned Trump in remarks that were applauded by the congregation. McCain will be buried at the U.S. Naval Academy in Annapolis in Maryland. Well, tackling climate change is increasingly becoming a priority for many governments around the world. In Sweden, one city has created a blueprint on how to be more eco-friendly. But as David Dorton reports, that model may not be easy to replicate.
Amid the forests of southern Sweden lies a blueprint for a greener future. This is Växjö, which this dustbin proudly proclaims to be Europe's greenest city. And the bin might just have a point. Växjö has radically cut its carbon dioxide emissions, down 58% between 1993 and 2016, according to the local government. Over the same period, local GDP rose by roughly a third. That makes Växjö an intriguing example of how the world could tackle climate change.
It must be possible because there's a fever all over the world.
Especially at the end of a summer of heat waves, droughts and wildfires that have raged from Greece to California. In October, leading climate scientists are set to warn governments that global carbon emissions from energy use need to plunge by up to 7% a year in order to limit global warming. The problem is that worldwide carbon emissions are going the other way. They rose by 2% last year. In Växjö, the biggest asset is the woods that encircle this city. Local forest owners earn extra money by selling waste branches, sawdust and bark to this biomass plant. It produces electricity and pumps hot water around the city. By 2020, half of all municipal buildings will also be made of wood.
Basically, all the energy that we are using to produce heat and power here comes from the forests around us.
Of course, not everywhere has the same resources, and not everywhere is located in a stable and wealthy Nordic democracy. Coal-dependent emerging economies led by China and India are all raising energy use to end poverty. Meanwhile, developed countries are wary of sacrificing growth for the environment. That makes Vekwa a difficult blueprint to reproduce, even if it does provide some food for thought.
China is coming up with a new and unique way to develop small towns in remote rural areas of the country. In recent years, local governments and businesses have spent millions of dollars on turning some of them into destinations for thrill-seeking sports fanatics. Eve Johnson takes a look.
China is giving a leg up to remote towns left behind in the race for development. Officials are spending big to promote a small but fast-growing sport here. Trail running. They're hoping that events like this ultra-marathon will help bring prosperity to places like Longyanxia in China.